to working better together. Today we chat with Dr. Paul White, author of The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace.
Cool. And action. Can you see me okay, by the way? Okay. It's a bit dark on my side.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot for joining us today, Paul. We're really excited just to find out more about your background and how you got so involved in just improving the appreciation in the workplace.
Sure. So I'm a psychologist by training. And so over the years, I've worked with families and individuals. I grew up in the context of a family-owned business in the U.S., and so started consulting with family-owned businesses, which is the vast majority in the U.S., dealing with relational issues. And saw at one point, I was talking to a dad and his son about transitioning across, and the dad said, this is going well. I think, my son's stepping up. I walk across the hall to the son, and I say, how is this going? He says, this is a disaster. It's never going to work. I can never please my dad. And so my wife and I had been reading the book called The 5 Love Languages, which Dr. Chapman wrote. It's in 50 languages, sold 14 million copies. And I thought, well, maybe the concepts could apply to work as well. So I actually pursued him for a year and then wound up working together on developing our online assessment called the Motivating by Appreciation Inventory, and then developed training resources, and then wrote the book and figured out how to help people show appreciation to others in ways that are meaningful versus just sort of going through the motions, employee recognition kinds of things.
Yeah. And I mean, what I love about the book, having read it again, you often speak about just how appreciation and recognition leads to like increased job satisfaction, high employee performance, and just enhanced levels of just productivity. I mean, can you tell us more just about that and maybe the science behind it and why?
Sure. Yeah. So actually, we just revised the book. It came out in January here, 2019, and brought in a whole bunch of new research by Gallup, by Towers Perrin, by the Boston Consulting Group, and it's international. It's not just U.S. based, and cite over 50 research studies in there that show that when team members feel valued, good things happen. I mean, that clearly turnover reduces, which is a huge, cost saving. Absenteeism, we know that productivity, one study shows that productivity increases 18% from the top quartile to the bottom 25%, and that profitability increases 22%. And so, it's not just about making people feel good. I mean, that's a nice thing, but we want healthy relationships, and people work together better. There's less conflict over stupid little things that sometimes otherwise would sort of, offend people. And so good things happen. And also research shows that managers like their jobs more when their team feels appreciated because they don't have to deal with all these sort of messy issues.
The one part of the book stood out to me when you mentioned that why just saying thanks doesn't work. Can you elaborate on that? Because that I find quite interesting.
Yeah. So one of the core concepts, I mean, I'm a psychologist, but this stuff is not rocket science by any means. It's that not everybody feels appreciated in the same ways. And so words of affirmation is one of the languages. And it's the most common way to show appreciation in the workplace. And it's actually the most commonly preferred one. About 45% of the workforce desire that. We've had 180,000 people take our inventory, so we have some good data. That means 55% of the people don't want words, and so that's important to know about. And also we have, 80,000 people on our newsletter list, and we do polls. And one of the things that we asked was, what don't you like to hear, and one is good job. Wow. And the reason is that it's too vague in general. I mean, you could say it to anybody. I had one tech person say, my boss would know whether I was doing a good job or not because they're not technical. I mean, they just manage me, right? And so one of the things we really encourage people to show an effective or communicate appreciation effectively is to use a person's name. We'd like to hear a name. If you're writing it, spell it right. That's helpful. Be specific about what it is that they did or are doing that you value. It's like, hey, thanks for getting your reports to me in on time. And then the third part is why that's important, either to you, to the organization, your clientele. And most people miss that. And so the more specific you can be, the better results and the more sense that they'll have it's really genuine.
So what you're saying is that people just are tired of just hey, thanks for the job well done. If you're going to give appreciation, try and be as genuine as much as possible. Otherwise, rather not give it at all.
Yeah, because otherwise it undermines it. And the other thing is, I mean, there are people that don't value words. I mean, there's sayings like words are cheap. Don't tell me you appreciate me, show me. And so that's why we have the other languages, including, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, which is not, bonuses and raises, and we can talk about that, and then even physical touch, which sort of ties into y'all's high five kind of thing.
Wow. And so what you're saying is it's not enough just saying it. It's just the actions are just as important as the words.
Absolutely. I mean, over half of the employees, value some other way of being shown appreciation than words. And that's why a lot of employee recognition programs don't work. It's just, sort of, and in fact, our research shows about 40% of the workforce in the U.S., I don't know about other places on this one, but don't want to go up in front of a large group to be, shown recognition appreciation. They don't want it. I had one leader, she said she got the Employee of the Year award, and she spent the 15 minutes prior to getting the award in the bathroom throwing up. I mean, it was just like, really anxiety producing for her.
Do you think it's because of anxiety, or do you think they actually don't want the glory and the fame for it?
Yeah, there's different reasons. One is, just not wanting the focus and attention. Sometimes they don't want to receive credit for what their team did. Lots of times they're afraid of going up and tripping, or they have to say something, or people are going to judge them for what they're wearing. And for others, it's just they're private, and they just don't want that kind of focus.
Yeah, I can see where most companies get it wrong. I mean, tell me, what do you think is the most common trait for companies getting this appreciation and recognition wrong in the workforce? What do you think is the most easy thing to fix? The easiest thing to fix, in practically.
Oh, well, the easiest thing to fix or the biggest I mean, what they do is it's generic. It's the same thing for everybody. And that it's highly public, it's verbal, and gifts. And gifts, nobody's going to give it back. But our research shows that gifts are only valued by 6% of the employees as far as the main way they want to be shown appreciation. And in talking to people, they say this, it's like, if I never hear anything, if nobody ever stops by to see how I'm doing, if I never get any help when I'm, maybe focused on a project and need some help, and they give me a gift, it feels pretty superficial. The other thing is, when people do value gifts, they want it to be personal. And that's where most places really get it wrong. It's like plaques, certificates, the same gift card to everybody, whatever. And for a gift to truly have meaning for most people, and this is really where the saying, it's the thought that counts. It's not about the big stuff. It's not a bonus or what. It's a small thing to show that you're getting to know people. Yeah. So one of the cool things about our model is that it's not top down. It can be done any direction.
Peer to peer.
So a colleague can bring in somebody's favorite, cup of coffee, or, a magazine maybe about their sports team or whatever, and say, hey, I just thought you might like this. And I think the other way people get it wrong is, and where it's led, is that people don't want to be valued just for what they do. Recognition for performance is a good thing if designed and implemented well. But most of us, I think all of us, are people besides just production units, right? And so people resent that they only hear good things when they meet or exceed standards, because there's times in life where, we have lives outside of work. And if you have a sick spouse, or you're dealing with a senior parent or a teenager out of control, it impacts work. Do you need to be sort of harped on about that? No, some support about you is valued at that time and can really build some loyalty.
Yeah. And then tell me, just in terms of your data, something we've noticed, we just did a bit of a data collation over the last quarter, and we noticed that in terms of the recognition, we've seen 10% of the recognition going top down, but about 90% of it from peer to peer. Have you seen similar insights within your organizations? So what I'm trying to say is that it's almost like there's less recognition coming from management, and there's more recognition coming from peer to peer.
Yeah, well, part of that, I think, recently is because there's some structure and ways to do that. And so, but I would say, we did some research comparing millennials to older employees and how they wanted to be shown appreciation. And clearly there's a trend for younger employees that they value appreciation from their colleagues more. In the past, there was a saying that people don't leave a job, they leave a manager, right?
Yeah.
That they can't stand their supervisor, right? That's maybe somewhat true, but it's less and less true, and especially for younger employees, that if they get along well with their peers and have supportive relationships, they can endure maybe some tension with their supervisor. And that's where they want to both hear and give encouragement. And so one of the things we find is that by empowering people to both do it with their colleagues as well as even up the chain, right? I mean, a supervisor likes to hear a compliment or have some appreciation at times. Yeah. So it's not sort of organizational and structured. It's very at a, sort of a fluid, personal kind of level.
Well, so you're saying if they're getting from the peers themselves, it's enough, even if they're not getting from the managers.
It could be. The thing that works the best, right, is if you have both, right? Yeah. Both, from the super. But part of it is, we also found that when it was solely the responsibility of the manager or supervisor, it felt onerous, over too much. And so this sort of lightens the weight on their shoulders, spreads the responsibility, and actually empowers people so that even if their supervisor's not doing, they can still start to show appreciation to one another or to their direct reports. And what we found is we actually tend to start in the middle of an organization often, that there's somebody who's found our book or our resources and invites us in. We work with them and it goes down. It may go back up, but it doesn't have to start at the top.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. Wow, thanks a lot. That was a lot to digest. Before we end off, we just want to ask a few, we've got these final questions just to wrap up. And we just want to find out, how do you spend your day on average?
On average, I get up and have breakfast with my wife. I drive in. I live in the country, but 20 minutes away from the office. I do a fair amount of writing. I do a fair amount of talking to strategic business partners, and then get ready for presentations where I go do training, and a lot of emails.
Yeah, my word.
But at a personal level with people, in responding to questions and then developing new materials. Okay. So that's the majority.
So do you see yourself as more of a early bird or a night owl?
Oh, definitely an early bird. Yeah. Okay, my brain flatlined after 9 p.m. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for this precious time in the morning.